Hey, what's going on guys? Nick here with a new report on Star Wars. So in this video we're going to be going over the real reason why Benioff and Weiss exited their upcoming Star Wars trilogy, which was set to kick off in 2022 following The Rise of Skywalker. All of the info that we're going to be going over in this deep dive analysis comes from Variety and The Hollywood Reporter, who have today published exclusive inside scoop reports on why the pair left. When we initially caught wind of the news, it was said to be an amicable split and came down mostly to timing and the kind of management that the duo would have to have between their Netflix deal they signed back in August and crafting a new trilogy of Star Wars films for Lucasfilm. But it seems that wasn't the only reason why they ultimately left. So we'll go over Variety's info first. On Monday, when showrunners Benioff and Weiss became the latest high-profile talents to part ways with Star Wars, they're now part of a revolving door of A-list directors who have found it impossible to realize their visions in a corporate culture that's said to invite little creative independence and argument. They join the ranks of previous directors who have been fired or quit, including Josh Trank, Colin Trevorrow, Lord and Miller, and to an extent Gareth Edwards, who was removed from the production of Rogue One and replaced by Tony Gilroy. Now, in Hollywood with these type of blockbusters, not unheard of for productions to run into creative disagreements, but the high rate of turnover is raising eyebrows across Hollywood and among the rabid base of fans. It's also inspiring questions about the management style of Kathy Kennedy, the executive tasked with guiding Lucasfilm and with finding fresh ways to expand a galaxy far, far away. Per Variety, when Kennedy and her team pitched these filmmakers on joining the Star Wars family, sources say they were promised some measure of creative control. However, multiple insiders said new ideas were commonly shot down, as Kennedy and her team were only looking for people to stick to the company line. If disagreements about the direction of the film became too intense, it usually led to the person leaving the project rather than an attempt to find common ground. The Lucasfilm brain trust would often turn to new writers, such as Lord and Miller, before ultimately retreating back to old standbys, such as Lawrence Kasdan, the writer behind Empire Strikes Back, who's still seen as a key sounding board on the productions at Lucasfilm. Even if the lack of an appetite for creative risk isn't to blame, there are questions about whether the abrupt departures of key talent points to a problem in how directors and writers are being vetted and hired. Now, this is all according to Variety right here. Benioff and Weiss had ambitious plans to take the Star Wars universe in a new direction, one that would exist apart from the Skywalker saga. The pair was interested in the Star Wars period that was going to explore how the Jedi came to exist, seemingly being part of the Old Republic era. However, Lucasfilm executives and creators began to see their visions for the film diverge during meetings last summer, and apparently, the deal they signed with Netflix for $250 million just this August brought things to a boiling point, because Disney was afraid of how their commitments would be to Star Wars while also having Netflix projects at the same time, especially with the growing competition between Disney+, HBO Max, and Netflix among other streamers. Apparently, as the relations wear down with Benioff and Weiss, the studio had begun taking general meetings with other writers on possible Star Wars pitches. It's unclear though exactly what these amounted to. Apparently, per Variety, J.J. Abrams has been one of the few directors who's been able to completely and successfully navigate the Lucasfilm landscape, but he also has a mega deal with Warner Media, meaning that he likely won't be involved in any future Star Wars besides The Rise of Skywalker. Rian Johnson, on the other hand, oversaw the divisive The Last Jedi, but he also said to get along with Kathleen Kennedy and has maintained that he has had creative freedom on that film, but fans were very upset with a lot of his decisions. He had been hired to oversee a separate trilogy, which is still in some sort of development, though it's unclear how far along work is on that production. Variety's sources at the studio insist that Kathy Kennedy's job is secure despite the churn of filmmaking talent, but insiders at talent agencies believe that top filmmakers may become wary of working on the series, particularly if the end result will become an embarrassing dismissal, and a public one too. Now, per THR's info, they said that sometime this summer, Benioff and Weiss took their families to Italy. Part of it was a vacation, but the other half was also visiting Star Wars creator George Lucas and doing research for their trilogy of films that they were going to oversee after wrapping up Game of Thrones. At the time of their Netflix deal in August, Benioff and Weiss were working on a treatment treatment for Disney and Lucasfilm. The pair was committed to writing at least one of the films, screenplay-wise, for their original trilogy. Sources also noted that Benioff and Weiss are very deep-dived kind of guys, and they really focus in on one project at a time, so it would have been hard for them to kind of be on set for Netflix stuff and also trying to manage Star Wars at the same time. Also, according to THR sources, Benioff and Weiss were having second thoughts about jumping into Star Wars due to what has been described as a toxic fandom. The creators had built up Game of Thrones from the ground up based on George R.R. Martin's sprawling novel series, and they were initially very heavily praised by critics and fans, but the last divisive 6-episode season was met with such backlash they cancelled out of a panel at Comic-Con this summer. So basically they didn't want to kind of jump from one toxic fandom to the other. Now here's where things get interesting. At the end of THR's report, they say, quote, "One underlying problem Benioff and Weiss's exit illustrates," one source notes, "is that there is still no consensus as to what Star Wars is and what Star Wars should be. Disney CEO Bob Iger said there would be a slowdown of Star Wars on the big screen, and Lucasfilm shelved the planned Obi-Wan movie in favor of making it a streaming series. Though at the same time, they also shelved Boba Fett from James Mangold and turned that basically into The Mandalorian. For now, the immediate future of Star Wars will be on the small screen with Disney+. In addition to Obi-Wan, we also have the Rogue One prequel series focusing on Cassian Andor. So what are guys' thoughts on all this? It was a lot of information to take in, but the consensus, basically, I guess you could say, in summarizing, is that things are not going as planned at Lucasfilm, and they definitely need to sort out their house and try to figure out what they really want from Star Wars, because they can't keep going through massive talent like this and high-profile, firings or talent just walking away from a project. Otherwise, like THR said, and Variety also said this, that basically people are going to be very wary of actually just signing up for Star Wars because they're going to be like, well, am I actually going to be able to make the movie, or am I going to get fired a few months into it because we can't come to an agreement on what to do with it? Because it seems like Kathy Kennedy is saying to these people that, yeah, you guys have all the freedom you want, just make up a story. And then all of a sudden, when they get their story done, she says, well, actually I don't like this, this, and this, and I want you guys to do X, Y, and Z. And they don't want to do that, and then they basically just kind of sit around and do nothing for a while until one of them walks away. So drop your thoughts down in the comments below. What do you guys think Disney should do with the future of Star Wars, and what are your thoughts on Benioff and Weiss exiting? For all things Star Wars and the latest in pop culture, be sure to subscribe to HN Entertainment.